Just to put this into perspective, the WTO says then that it could be the fifth consecutive year that we see subpar trade growth, and it's seen as yet another example of a gloomy outlook for the entire global economy. Let's talk more about this now with Roberto Azevedo. He's with us from the organization's headquarters in Geneva. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Azevedo, for being with us, first of all. Where does this lower forecast come from? What's to blame for this lower trade growth, as you're predicting?
Essentially, sluggish economic growth. The trade numbers today are following the GDP growth very closely, almost on a one-per-one basis. So to the extent that the global economy is growing slowly, trade numbers are going to go up slowly as well. That's the main factor behind the numbers.
Between what countries and on what routes is trade stalling in particular? Or is the sort of stalling growth worldwide? Is it general or is it in particular points?
In fact, it has been changing. Up until 2 years ago, the EU was a drag to the numbers, and Asia was a big plus story there. More recently, this has inverted. Asia has gone down. So the contribution of Asia for the expansion of trade has been almost negative, very modest actually. And on the bright side, you see the United States and Europe are beginning to pick up their contribution on the expansion of trade. So the numbers are similar for 2016 and 2015, but they are very different in terms of what was happening in the past and what's happening now in terms of who's driving the numbers.
I want to pick up on a point that you were making before, that slower trade growth is linked to essentially slower growth in the global economy. How worried should we be from your perspective that we're seeing both slower growth as well as slower trade?
We should be worried, and I think that countries should be looking at how trade can help. The reality is that as far as fiscal policy and monetary policy is concerned, there is so much that you can do by now. We have very expansionary monetary policies. We are hopeful that the effect of those in the EU will be healthy this year and next. But fiscal policy is also very limited. Trade can do more. So to the extent that we can open markets and bring the costs of doing trade lower, there is a possibility of improving the global economy by a few notches.
Now, at the same time, though, if you look at the political landscape, there's a lot of people who say that perhaps more trade isn't the right answer to a lot of the problems in the global economy. For instance, in the United States, there are grumblings about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a trade deal around the Pacific. We're also seeing issues here in Europe regarding the current negotiations of a transatlantic trade deal between the United States and Europe. There's a lot of, as I say, skepticism that more trade is the right answer. What do you say about that?
I think we cannot be misguided in this conversation. A lot of the trade debate has to do with jobs. People claim that trade makes jobs disappear in their countries. That's simply not true. Let me give you the example of the United States. The United States reached in 2015 the peak numbers in terms of manufacturing. They never manufactured more before. However, since 2000, they lost 5 million jobs. Those jobs did not disappear because of trade, because manufacturing is going up. Those jobs are disappearing because of automation, of new technologies. I have no doubts in my mind that trade is a big player in driving economic growth in the United States, for example, but trade benefits are distributed throughout the society, through consumers. A lot of sectors win. Those gains are not very visible sometimes, and people don't realize that they are there. However, losses and competition and job losses, they're very visible, and the sectors that are affected by that, they're very vocal, and those are the ones that show up more in the press and in the general debate. But if you are to make a positive decision regarding the economy, you have to look at the net effect of trade, not the localized effect.
I want to ask you about another hot topic here in Europe, and that is the potential of Britain leaving the European Union, which would cause trouble for all sorts of trade deals, I suppose. Would a Brexit hit global trade levels, and if so, how?
Well, first of all, we don't know that the Brexit will actually happen. Of course, this is a sovereign decision of the British people, and they will, I think, be looking very carefully at that, because trade will be affected, and trade is a big part of the economic policy, the economic matrix in Britain. I think that a lot will depend on the terms of this separation, if it does happen. So how would be the trade relations between the EU and the UK, and also what be the outcome of negotiations between the UK and the other WTO members, because at this point in time, we don't know what the rights and obligations would be at the end of those negotiations, and this is something that is very hard to predict.
All right, Roberto Azevedo, the Director General of the World Trade Organization, I want to thank you very much indeed for speaking to us here at France 24 this Thursday.